lesson are very important. How to draw what I taught you in this lesson is really also very important. I'm repeating this lesson now with you since we have a quiz in this lesson on Friday. On Friday, as you know, we have a quiz, a math quiz. You have 2 lessons for this quiz. You have this lesson, which is lecture 2, the bisector and the perpendicular bisector. And you have also the decimal fractions that we did today. So to go back on this lecture, I want from those who are present now with me, I want from Zen to unmute. I want to hear your voice, Zen. Can you unmute, please, Zen?
Yes.
Okay, stay with me, Zen. Stay unmuted. I want to ask you. I want to ask you questions. Why I'm stressing on you, Zen? Because you have been absent for more than 1 Zoom session. I want to make sure that you have all the information of this lesson, since, as I said, this lesson is very important not only for grade 6. You will be using this lesson in grade 7, in grade 8, and in grade 9. So if you know everything in this lesson, things then will be easier. In this lesson then, we studied 2 things. As you can see, we have studied a new thing called the bisector of an angle. Of course, then you know what's an angle, right? Then are you still with me? Okay, you're listening, I think, then. So as I said, we have studied a very important thing called the bisector of an angle. We should all know to define a bisector. So we should study and memorize the definition of the bisector of an angle, because when I understand and memorize the definition, then I can draw this bisector easily, because I will draw according to the definition. The second thing we studied in this lesson is the perpendicular bisector of a segment. So here, the bisector is for an angle, and the perpendicular bisector, we draw it for a segment. Of course, we know what's a segment. It's a line, but it has 2 endpoints. It has a starting point and an ending point, because a segment has a length. We always draw a segment knowing its length. So we are going to define a perpendicular bisector of a segment. And how can we draw a perpendicular bisector of a segment? So first, I will start with the first thing. These rulers, again, I will talk about these rulers. We are going to use them in our lesson. So in our lesson, these rulers are very important. The first ruler is called the protractor. As you can see, it's half a circle. The protractor, we use it for 2 things. We use it to draw an angle. So we cannot draw an angle unless we use the protractor. And we use it to draw the bisector of the angle. So this protractor, we use it to draw an angle and its bisector. If you look at this protractor, I want to let you be familiar with this protractor. You will be using it. As you can see, we have here down this line in the beginning of the protractor down. This is called the 0 line. Why? Because the 0 of the protractor. Yes, Zen, you are raising your hand.
Miss, sorry, I lost connection.
No, don't worry, but stay with me, Zen.
Teacher, I have a question.
Okay.
Yes, who has a question?
Me, Muhammad Jawad. What is a bisector?
Okay, I haven't started a bisector yet, Muhammad Jawad. I'm still talking about the rulers, because these rulers, we should know how to use them. So in the protractor, we have a 0 line. So if we put this line on the line of the angle and this point should be on the vertex of the angle, we start counting 0 degrees, 10 degrees, 30, 20 degrees, 30 degrees, 40, 50, 60, 70, etc. until we arrive to the 180. If I start counting from the other side, also I have 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 until I am 180 degrees. The second ruler, of course, you know it, it's the long ruler. The long ruler, we use it to draw a segment, because to draw a segment, we need a long ruler. And the last ruler is called the set square. Of course, the set square, we use it to draw a perpendicular. So the set square is used to draw a perpendicular line. As you can see in the set square, I have 3 lines. I have a short horizontal line, I have a long vertical line, and I have an oblique line. So we have 3 kinds of lines in this protractor: horizontal, vertical, oblique. The oblique line, I don't need it in drawing a perpendicular. So this line, don't look at it at all. In drawing a perpendicular, you will be using the short line and the vertical line. The short line, you put your set square on the line you are drawing a perpendicular using the short line. And when you draw a perpendicular, you draw it through the vertical line. So always your set square, put it on the short line, on the line that you have, and draw a perpendicular using the vertical line. So these 3 rulers, please make sure that you have them for Friday, because on Friday you will be using these 3 rulers in your quiz. Now I will move to what Muhammad Isa asked. What is a bisector? You should know, Muhammad Isa, what do we mean by a bisector of an angle, because I have discussed this a week ago or more than a week ago. You should study and memorize the definition of the bisector. So it's very important to know that we draw a bisector for an angle. So we should have an angle and we are going to draw its bisector. What is the definition? This definition, you should memorize it. Please memorize this definition. Yes, Muhammad Isa, please start reading. A bisector, start reading.
Okay. A bisector of an angle is a ray that divides an angle into 2 equal angles.
So, Muhammad, you will have an example, for example, an angle MON. Do you see angle MON?
Yeah.
What is the vertex of this angle, Muhammad?
Oh.
Oh, the measure of this angle, as you can see, is 60 degrees. So I have an angle MON which measures 60 degrees. What should you do? You should draw its bisector. You see what I have written here in the middle, Muhammad? See this?
Yeah.
These are the steps how we draw a bisector. These you should always do to draw a bisector. So first, as the definition says, the bisector will divide the angle into 2 equal angles. So I will take the measure of the angle and divide it by 2. Right, Muhammad?
Yeah.
So the first step to draw the bisector of angle MON, we divide the measure of the angle by 2. So to draw the bisector, this is the first step we should start with. Always we should divide the measure, whatever the measure is, we divide it by 2 and we get the answer, which is 30 degrees. What do we mean by 30 degrees? We will get, after drawing a bisector, we will get 2 equal angles. Each angle will have the measure of 30 degrees. Now we bring the protractor, which is half a circle, we put it on the vertex and we mark on the 30 degrees, we mark the 30 degrees, then we take away the protractor, then the point of the 30 degrees that we marked, we join it with the vertex, as you can see here. I draw this line. This is the 30 degrees here. I join this line with the vertex. This blue line, which I call it OT, it is a ray. It is the bisector of angle MON. Then, what are the two equal angles that I got here? The first angle is MOT, yes?
TON.
And TON. The measure of MOT is 30 degrees and the measure of TON is 30 degrees. I want to ask if any of you knows the answer. Can you tell me what pair of angles are MOT and TON? What kind of pairs, Samia? Yes.
They're adjacent.
Yes, they are adjacent because they have the same vertex O and they have a common side OT. Always, whenever you draw a bisector of an angle, you will get two adjacent angles. They are equal because the bisector, as the definition says, the bisector of an angle is a ray that divides an angle into two equal angles. Yes, Zen, can you please again read the definition of the bisector of an angle?
A bisector of an angle is a ray that divides an angle into two equal angles.
Yes, it divide. This definition, Zen, you should memorize it, okay?
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Now, if you look at this slide, I showed you exactly what to do in order to draw the bisector using a protractor. So you have an angle LMN. It is drawn. You don't know its measure now. To know its measure, you bring the protractor. Half of the protractor, you put it on the vertex, and the zero line, you put it from the line of the angle. If I wanted to know the measure of angle LMN, I count 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. It is 60 degrees. So as the protractor tells me, the measure of angle LMN is 60 degrees. Now I want to draw the bisector. What should I do? I divide 60 by 2. I got 30. Again, I put the protractor in angle LMN and I mark. If you can see this red mark here, it is on the 30 degrees. So this is marked on 30 degrees. I take away the protractor. With a long ruler, I join this red mark with the vertex M. I got this line which I drew here. So angle, this angle is 30 degrees and this angle is 30 degrees. These two angles will be equal to each other. So always, whenever you want to draw a bisector, you should follow these steps. Any question before I continue about the definition of a bisector and how we draw a bisector, guys?
No, we got it.
Everything is clear and okay with you?
Yes.
Lana, do you have any question? I think Lana is with me. Lana, please answer me. Do you have any question about the bisector and how we draw it, Lana?
No.
Everything is okay with you?
Yes.
Okay. Hadi, now you joined. Do you have any question about the definition of the bisector and how we draw the bisector of an angle?
No.
So as I said, Hadi, again, I want to show you something, Hadi. Stay with me. Do you see this definition, Hadi, that we have here? A bisector of an angle is a ray that divides an angle into two equal angles. This definition, you should memorize it, Hadi. Because if you memorize it, you will know how to draw the bisector. Is this okay with the definition, Hadi?
Okay.
Okay,
Yes.
so this is the definition and how we draw an angle. So as I said, we always use a protractor and a long ruler in order to draw a bisector of an angle. And after drawing a bisector, we always get two adjacent angles. So if I have an angle ABC, this is the big angle ABC. As you can see, because angle ABD equal to angle DBC, they are two equal angles, then the ray BD is the bisector of angle ABC. The two adjacent angles are ABD and DBC are two adjacent angles in this drawing. Now, after drawing a bisector of an angle, suppose you have an angle BAC, we have drawn the bisector AD. After drawing the bisector, if we take any point on the bisector, wherever this point is, but it should be on the bisector. So wherever you take a point on the bisector, if you draw a perpendicular from the point to AB, and a perpendicular from the point to AC, these two lines that you draw will be equal to each other. So this is a very important property of a bisector of an angle, which says a point which is on the bisector of an angle is equidistant from the two sides of the angle. The word equidistant is very important to know. The word equidistant means it is at an equal distance. So the distance from D to M is equal to the distance from D to N. So the line DM will be equal to the line DN. This blue line here will be equal to the blue line here. The green line will be equal to the green line. The pink line will be equal to the pink line. So any point on the bisector of an angle is equidistant from the two sides or the two lines of the angle. Now I will move to the perpendicular bisector of a segment. So we always draw a perpendicular bisector for a segment. Of course, you all know what's a segment. A segment, we draw a line which has a starting point and an ending point. Always when you draw a segment, you should know the length of the segment, because the segment also always have a known length or a definite length. For example, I will tell you, draw a segment AB equals 5 centimeter. Draw a segment MN equals 6 centimeter. I will always give you the length of the segment that you should draw. Now, also, there is a definition for the perpendicular bisector of a segment. I want, please, Lana, to read the definition. Lana, just read the definition, please. Read, Lana.
The perpendicular bisector of a segment is a line perpendicular to the segment at its midpoint.
Can I ask you a question, Lana?
Yes.
Do you know what is a midpoint of a segment? What do we mean by this word midpoint? What is this? Do you know, Lana, what is a midpoint?
It is a half of a segment.
Yes, it is a point in half of the segment. Bravo, Lana. So whenever you want to know the midpoint of the segment, you will divide the measure of the segment by 2. Okay, Lana? So the midpoint of a segment is always, as Lana said, in the middle of the segment. It's a point in half of the segment. So to draw the perpendicular bisector of a segment, we will draw a line perpendicular to the segment at its midpoint. So before we draw the perpendicular, we should know the midpoint. As I said, to know the midpoint of a segment, we divide the measure of the segment by 2. Suppose you are given a segment AB of length 6 centimeter. we will bring the long ruler I showed you at the beginning, and you draw a segment AB, which is 6 centimeters, and you write A at the beginning and B at the end. Now, after drawing the segment, we should find the midpoint. To find the midpoint, we divide the measure of the segment by 2. So we write 6 divided by 2 is 3 centimeters. Again, I bring the long ruler and I put it again on AB. Of course, the 0 should be at A and B should be on the 6. I mark on the 3 centimeter. I put a mark like this. I put an X. This is the 3 centimeter. I name it M. So here, as you can see, what does this drawing mean? This drawing means whenever you see here a mark and the same mark you see it here, these are similar to each others. This tells me that M is the midpoint of segment AB. What do we mean by M is the midpoint of segment AB? AM is equal to MB because AM is equal to 3 centimeters and MB is equal to 3 centimeters. Now, after finding the midpoint of the segment, I bring the set square. You still remember the set square. I put the short line of the set square on MB here, and the vertical line should pass in M. Then I draw a line. I draw this line, which I call it D. It is the perpendicular bisector of segment AB. If you see this mark here, we should always do it after drawing the perpendicular bisector to show that this line and this line are perpendicular to each others. So line D is the perpendicular bisector of segment AB since it passes in M, which is the midpoint of segment AB. Any question, guys, about the perpendicular bisector of a segment?
No.
Okay, I want now, please, again, I want Hadi to read the definition of the perpendicular bisector of a segment. Please, Hadi, read the definition.
The perpendicular bisector of a segment is a line perpendicular to the segment at its midpoint.
Hadi, do you see the definition that you have read now?
Yes.
I maybe ask you in the quiz on Friday just this question: define a perpendicular bisector. You should write this definition that you read now. It is a line perpendicular to the segment at its midpoint. You will take a mark. Okay, Hadi?
Okay.
So in order to be able to write the definition of a perpendicular bisector of a segment, we should memorize it. Please memorize also this definition because it's very, very important. So this definition is very important, guys. Now, as you can see here, if I asked you, what do we call CD here? Because we see that there is a mark here, similar to a mark here, we can see that D is the midpoint of segment AB. Since the line CD is perpendicular to AB at D, then we say that CD is the perpendicular bisector of segment AB. Again, these marks are very important. They tell me that D is the midpoint of segment AB since AD is equal to DB. Because we have drawn a perpendicular to segment AB passing through the midpoint, then it will be a perpendicular bisector of segment AB. Also in the next drawing, we have a segment AB. Can you tell me, Julia, what is Q for segment AB? What do we call the point Q for segment AB?
Can you repeat the question for me?
Julia, we have a segment AB, right?
Yes.
This is point Q. It's here. Do you see point Q?
Yes.
What is Q for segment AB? What does Q represent for segment AB?
Midpoint.
Yes, since AQ is equal to QB, because here we have a mark, the same mark here, as Julia said, Q is the midpoint of segment AB. I want to ask Samia. Yes, Samia.
Yes, miss.
What do we call this blue line? Name this blue line. What is it named? P what?
What do you mean?
Say
PQ.
yes,
Sorry.
PQ. Yes. Can you see, Samia, that it is perpendicular to AB passing through Q?
Yeah.
Then what do we call this blue line, Samia?
Perpendicular bisector.
Yes, it is the perpendicular bisector of segment AB. Thank you, Samia. Now, in the time remaining, I still have about 10 minutes or less. In this time, I want to tell you a very important property of the perpendicular bisector of a segment. Whenever you draw a perpendicular bisector of a segment, if you take any point on the perpendicular bisector, so if you take, for example, point C belong to the perpendicular bisector, then any point belonging to the perpendicular bisector of the segment is equidistant from the two extremities of the segment. What do we mean by extremities? The extremities of the segment are A and B. The starting point and the ending point are the extremities of the segment. So C, as you can see, point C is on the perpendicular bisector. It belongs to the perpendicular bisector of segment AB. If you look at CA and CB, this blue line and this blue line, they are equal to each other's, since any point belonging to the perpendicular bisector of a segment is equidistant from the two extremities. Then CA will be equal to CB. This is very important. This is a very important property of the perpendicular bisector of a segment. Now together, let's solve this exercise, because you will have a similar exercise to this in the quiz on Friday. Let me start. First, I have given you this figure. This figure will be given to you. It's very clear. I should know how to read a figure. I can see that we have a segment AB. I have a point K. I have a mark here similar to the mark here. I have a red line called D. It's perpendicular at K. And I have a green line MA and a green line MB. Of course, they are equal because they have the same marks. And SA and SB are equal since they have the same marks. Now we should continue this paragraph in front of you. I want to ask Zain, are you still with me, Zain?
No, he left.
Oh, he left. Hello. I want, maybe he have a problem in connection. Muhammad Isa, can you answer me, please?
Yes, teacher.
Muhammad, if you look at the figure given to you here, point K, do you see point K in the figure?
Yes.
What does point K represent for segment AB? It is what?
Midpoint?
Yes. Since you are given, Muhammad, AK is equal to KB, then point K is the midpoint of segment AB. Okay, stay with me, Muhammad. If K is the midpoint, then what can you say about K, AK and KB? They are what?
Repeat the question.
You said that K is the midpoint of segment AB, right?
Yes.
Then point K is in the middle of AB, right?
Yes.
Then what can you say about AK and KB? They are
Uh,
E
A line?
Equal,
Oh, oh, right.
right?
I didn't.
Don't worry, but whenever you have a midpoint, Muhammad, then AK will be equal to KB, right?
Yes.
Okay, then KA will be equal to KB. Now I want to ask Julia. Yes, Julia.
Yes, Miss.
If you look at this red line, Julia, line D,
90. Yeah.
when it makes this mark here, this 90 degrees, then line D is what with respect to AB?
It is
When do we do this mark? When two lines are parallel or perpendicular?
perpendicular.
Then line D is perpendicular to segment AB at K. Because it is perpendicular to segment AB at K, it becomes what, Julia?
Miss, I know it's not my question, but can you repeat, please?
Who's talking?
Oh, it's me.
Julia?
Sammy.
Samia. Samia, when you see this mark, the 90 degrees, you know this mark is the right angle mark. It's a 90 degrees, right?
Yeah.
Whenever we see it, then the red line is perpendicular with AB, right?
Yeah.
If it is perpendicular and passing through the midpoint, it becomes what?
Equidistant.
No. What the line D becomes what for segment AB? It's only perpendicular. It's passing through the midpoint. Then it's called what? What do we call the line perpendicular to the segment at the midpoint? Guys, I will go back. The perpendicular bisector of a segment is a line perpendicular to the segment at its midpoint. So any line perpendicular to the segment at the midpoint, what do we call it?
Perpendicular bisector.
Yes. So line D is perpendicular to segment AB at K, which is the midpoint. Then line D becomes what for segment AB?
Perpendicular bisector.
Yes, it becomes the perpendicular bisector. That's right. If I take a point M belonging to the perpendicular bisector, then what becomes M with respect to AB? It is
Equidistant.
equidistant from A and B. What do we mean by equidistant? Then MA and MB will be
Equal
to each other's. Yes. Now opposite. If you are given that SA is equal to SB, then where is S? Where does A belong? Where does S belong?
in the middle.
To the perpendicular
Yeah. Bisector.
of segment AB. Please, you see this exercise, practice it as much as you can. This is a very, it summarizes everything about the perpendicular bisector of the segment. This exercise is very important, guys, okay?
It's like a summary that you have to
Yes,
fill in.
it's a summary of everything you should know about the perpendicular bisector of a segment. Yes, Samia, that's true.
Yeah.
Okay, any question about these, guys?
No.
Okay, please revise this as much as you can, because you will have this lesson on Friday for a quiz. Please revise all the definitions. Try to draw angles and their bisectors, segments and their perpendicular bisectors. Please use marks. Use the mark of the midpoint. Use the mark of the perpendicular bisector. These are very important. If you don't have any more questions, I'm done for today, okay?
I have one, but it's not to do with the lesson.
Yes, you can ask whatever the question
How
is.
do I for some reason, unlike other quizzes for other classes, I don't get the grades for math.
Who are you, Samia?
Yeah.
I uploaded all the grades. Julia, did you got your grade in math?
In math, not yet.
Why? I've uploaded it last week. Samia, you've got 10/10, and Julia, you've got, I will check why didn't you see it, but I uploaded it a week ago. Julia, you get 8.5. You have some mistakes, and Samia, you got 10. Okay.
Okay.
So please revise well for your quiz on Friday for this lesson. And I thank you all for joining, guys. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye, Miss.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Miss Carla.
Shihadi.